as one of the most important tax-related cases of the highest court's term and could determine how penalties are decided if someone fails to file a foreign bank account report if it wasn't done willfully. In Washington, Ryan Schmelz, Fox News.
The jackpot for tonight's Powerball lottery drawings at around $1.2 billion. It's been rolling over since August 3rd with no one hitting all 6 numbers since then. There were $5 million winners Monday for getting 5 of the numbers right. I'm Chris Foster, Fox News.
WPTV's First Alert Weather on WSTU is brought to you by Sailfish Roofing, offering excellence, honesty, and integrity in everything they do. Sailfish Roofing, 772-263-ROOF. Community roofing company you can trust. Sailfish Roofing. Now here's WPTV's First Alert meteorologist.
Your WPTV First Alert forecast. This afternoon, warm and humid, highs reaching the mid to upper 80s. We'll see a mix of sun and clouds and a couple of inland showers and storms. This evening, mainly dry conditions with temperatures down at the low 80s. Tomorrow, highs in the mid-80s, scattered showers and a couple of thunderstorms, then drying out by the evening hours. Friday, we're mostly sunny, mainly dry, highs in the mid-80s going all the way through the weekend forecast. I'm WPTV First Alert meteorologist Katya Hall for WSTU 1450, Martin County's Heritage Station.
You are listening to WSTU, Stewart, Jensen Beach, Hope Sound, Martin County's Heritage Station.
It's time now for the Casey Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's Casey Ingram.
Welcome back, and here we are, our last Meet Your Candidate of the season. Folks, early voting has already begun, so the election is going to be, of course, next Tuesday, November 8th. So if you haven't voted already, make sure you do on November 8th. Before we get into the show, I want to remind everybody that public service equals public trust. This is a reminder to vote for Raymond Denzel. Ray Denzel will work for all the people of District 86. Ray Denzel is a problem solver and will always have an open door for you to reach him. Ray Denzel won't just vote the party line. Ray will vote for what makes sense for the people. Early voting begins October 26th, or vote for Ray Denzel on November 8th. Political advertisement paid for and approved by Raymond Denzel, Democrat, for Florida House of Representatives, District 86. Also want to remind everybody to check out the best kept secret in Martin County. You can come by boat, car, or stroll the boardwalk to explore what is the best kept secret in Martin County. It's the Fish House Art Center, and it's located in Port Salerno, down in the pocket. You can check them out online, thefishhouseartcenter.com, or give them a call, 221-5482. If you go down there and explore their boardwalk, you'll see that there's some local artists, an Airbnb, art gallery, boat charters, marina, craft and creamery, craft beers and wine, 24 flavors of ice cream. There is literally something there for the entire family. They're doing a little bit of renovation right now, but don't let that stop you. There's still a lot of fun things to do. And finally, Indiantown Marina is one of South Florida's best boat storage facilities. It's located inland on the Okeechobee Waterway in a very well-protected hurricane hull. They're home to many in the cruising community who find their facility ideally situated and user-friendly. It's a do-it-yourself and full-service boat yard, so it offers the best of both worlds. If you need any kind of electrical, mechanical, propped and shaft work, bottom painting, you name it, you can have that done at the Indiantown Marina. Give them a call at 631-3272. That's 772-631-3272. So I think joining us online via Zoom, we have Dr. Corinna Balderramos Robinson, and she is running for it's a new district this year, Corinna, and I just blanked out on it. What's the number?
It's totally okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Casey. You mentioned before this is the last interview, so you say the last for the best, right?
Yes, absolutely. And CD 21, it used to be 18, so yeah. I just blanked out here for a second, but I did save the best for last. And folks, on the phone here, it's Corinna Robinson. She is running for Florida, or not Florida House of Representatives, but Congress, House of Representatives, Congressional District 21. Dr. Robinson is all-American roots. She's born and raised in America. She's of Hispanic and German heritage. She's raised 3 sons as a single mother. They are all college graduates, and she actively supports numerous mentoring and faith-based organizations. Her political career, she campaigned for Florida's State Senate District 25 in 2020. And you might remember Corinna. She was on the show then as well, and she earned 43% of the votes. She served as chair, Speakers of Bureau, League of Women Voters, Palm Beach County, performed as one of the Florida Dems' top field organizers during the 2018 Nelson Gillum coordinated campaign, served as a 2016 Brookings Legislative Congressional Fellow advising on national security, defense, and veterans policy issues, authored talking points and testimony, and regularly met with constituents on the members' behalf. Campaigned as the 2014 candidate for South Dakota's sole congressional representative seat and secured 34% of the votes in just 14 months. Her government civilian career served as legislative affairs director in Iraq amid intra-agency and diplomatic officials, hallmarked for being a dynamic and effective negotiator, and led the Anti-Terrorism and Force Protection Directorate at the Pentagon, leading teams responsible for protecting high-risk personnel and safeguarding over 100 facilities. Her military career, Mustang, completed 25 years of honorable active duty service, retiring with the rank of major, coordinated numerous congressional delegation visits and liaised with Special Operation Forces and other governmental agencies during the surge in Iraq. She joined the Army at a young age of 17 and worked up to Sergeant First Class. Subsequently attended Officer Candidate School and entering the Military Police Corps, commanded paratroopers from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, providing immediate response to the Pentagon's 9/11 terrorist attack and support to combat operations in Afghanistan, and served as Deputy Provost Marshal in Iraq, supporting counterterrorism operations. She has a Doctor of Management in Homeland Security, Master of Science degree in Public Policy, Georgetown University, and also served as an adjunct professor there for master's level course in Homeland Security, Master of Arts degree in Criminal Justice. And Corinna, my goodness, that might be the longest bio I've had to read, but you are one qualified woman, and very proud to have you here on the show today so we can learn a little bit more about you and why you're running for CD 21.
Thank you so much, Casey, for that introduction. And all that same information is available on a very comprehensive website. I put it in the chat room. You can Google www.Corinna, Corinna, the word for, F-O-R, Florida, all spelled out, .us. I'm running for U.S. Congress. It's not the first time I've campaigned. I'm a very seasoned person. I'm a grassroots soldier still on the battlefield. My top 2 legislative priorities for the upcoming term includes restoring the faith and hope in our republic. In doing so, I will protect everyone's right to vote and uphold the oath. I first took the oath, as was mentioned, at the age of 17, and I'm so willing to do it again in the halls of Congress. As a former military policewoman, I have fought in combat to defend our nation's freedom and care deeply about our nation's freedom. And I will continually try to preserve our democratic way of life. As mentioned, I served in the military, the U.S. government, on Capitol Hill. I own a small business. I've traveled the world. And I chose, as mentioned, running for SD 25 before and now CD 21. It's the same turf. I'm out there making sure people understand what's at stake. This midterm election is so important.
It certainly is. There's a lot of issues that are at the top of people's minds today. As the Fed is meeting, we're probably going to have another 3/4 of a point raised on the interest. And so inflation is certainly what they're trying to curb here. And inflation has just been crazy this year. As a congresswoman, what would you do to help, just the average working folks that are really being impacted by this?
Well, first, I want them to recognize this is a global inflation problem. Most of it due to the pandemic. There's a huge challenge with being able to ship goods or supplies or things that we need on a day-to-day basis, and we need to be resilient. To combat this rising inflation, Congress did pass the Inflation Reduction Act. This bill allows to slow inflation by lowering energy and healthcare costs. Matter of fact, on the news this morning, the administration is proposing, I believe, I wrote down $9 billion towards lowering energy costs. And all this takes time to implement. again, I've worked at senior levels of the government on Capitol Hill, to get an amendment or a law or something on the floor is very difficult because we have so much partisan divide. And that's why I continually say I'm a nation first patriot, because I served so long in defense of our nation. I will not be wedded to a party. I will stand my ground and do what's in the best interest of our constituents. We're trying to make sure that, people who represented us in Congress, unlike my opponent, we didn't need to vote against the Consumer Fuel Price Gouging Prevention Act and so many other types of legislation. I mean, we see big corporations, oil industry, making billions and billions of dollars of profit. And what can we do as a United States congressman or woman? Well, what we can do is, as I've often talked about, a whole of society strategy. That is, Congress is just but one entity. I mean, we have the United States government, we have corporations, we have local, state level leadership, we have faith-based organizations, nonprofits. And I have the requisite experience, having worked with all those organizations before, to understand we need to work at it as a nation. And I do believe, not just for the fellowship that I had on Capitol Hill, but studying public policy, drafting legislation, that I will assume the office as your representative and go straight to work. I'm not one of those people that are just flagrantly hoping to win and then I'll figure it out. That's not the case with Corinna.
Well, Corinna, as I went over your background at the beginning of the hour here, you definitely have a lot of experience working in government already, and I think it's really good experience that you're bringing that background to the table here, and it's unique for us. So not only do you have that government background, but you are a true patriot, you're a veteran, you've served our country, like you said, since you've been 17, and I think that it's a really unique set of attributes that you can bring to Washington, D.C. And folks, we're speaking with Dr. Corinna Robinson. She's running for Congressional District 21, Florida, or not Florida, but the House of Representatives here in Congress. And again, early voting started next week. The 8th is the day to vote if you haven't done your early voting or mail-in ballot. Corinna, your opponent, and you have a really big difference here, and that's the women's rights to reproductive health care. And of course, Roe v. Wade was overturned earlier this year. So tell us where you would stand if you are our congressperson representing us on the, what happened with Roe v. Wade.
The Supreme Court's overturning of Roe v. Wade this summer, has really changed the landscape of women's reproductive rights. Though most polls show that the majority of Americans want women to have a choice, the Supreme Court ruling decided opposite. And I know my opponent does not think this should be held at a federal level. It should be a state level right. I disagree. We should keep it in place or return to it. It's heartless to think that, to include our governor, wants to impose a ban on women making a choice, especially in instances of rape or incest or use of contraception. My difference from the incumbent perhaps is that I've traveled the world, not just in the military, but even with my small business, going to countries that women are being sold, trafficked. They're not given the opportunity to use birth control to protect themselves. And so here in America, there's a rising movement of government trying to control a woman's body, and I will not accept it. I will fight to make sure we have that autonomy. Very important.
And another issue that is on the tip of everybody's tongue, of course, through these last couple of years, especially is gun safety reform legislation. What would you hope to bring to the table there?
Well, as I mentioned, I never rest on my laurels. I spent a long time as a law enforcement officer, not just in the military, serving in Iraq and supporting combat operations in Afghanistan, but even as a government civilian or as a small business. I worked with the Joint Terrorism Task Force. I've worked with different FBI operators on the battlefield or in the continental United States. And I believe that any type of mass casualty weapon should be in the hands of the U.S. military or our law enforcement officers only. We see the increase of mass casualty attacks, and it's really harrowing to know that that's happening in a lot of our schools. and killing a lot of innocent civilians. And we have to do gun safety legislation reform. I would mandate background checks for all owners of any type of weapon. And furthermore, and I know this scares people, is to have accountability. This is like when you have a driver's license. Okay, what kind of car do you drive? How many cars do you drive? Are you a responsible driver? And if you're not, then we take the car away. It's the same thing with the gun. We should not have guns in the hands of people who are dangerous.
No, we absolutely shouldn't have it in the hands of people that are dangerous. And that's certainly an issue that is such a tough one to address in Congress. And we need people that are there, strongly fighting for our rights and to protect us. Corinna, locally here, this is probably one of the largest issues we have, and that is our waterways. We've been very fortunate these last few years to not have the massive discharges from Lake Okeechobee, so everybody could see the river can heal itself and the water gets cleaner if you don't have these discharges. And primarily, we've had some projects that have come online, but moreover, it's we just haven't had any major rain events. So you've worked with the United States Army Corps of Engineers previously, which I think would be really important. What would you do to help continue to heal our waterways and hopefully stop these discharges someday?
Well, we are making progress, but we have to do so much more. My experience in working with the Corps was in Washington, D.C., but, we did a lot of environmental studies that would take years looking at every single vulnerability and what the impact is. And so here, and I just didn't show up here and decide to run. I've been watching this district since I served on Capitol Hill. And even before then, my family and we were blessed to have a timeshare in the district where we would visit for every Easter and every Christmas. And so I care deeply about everything with regard to our environment, especially the water. I love to scuba dive, and I love to go sailing. And when I go out there, it breaks my heart to see the vulnerabilities we're facing. So, the algal blooms, the cyanobacteria in Lake O, over years, we're starting to do a little bit better with the Corps of Engineers, trying to keep the water levels low. They're a federal entity. We have to cordially work with them and negotiate. We can't mandate as a member of Congress what they have to do. But, for example, with legislation, our incumbents voted against the Build Back Better bill, the Inflation Reductions Act, the pro-environment funding package, which would have helped us in the long run. And I feel sometimes that he's probably vulnerable to what the party wants him to do. And maybe that particular law or amendment or funding doesn't have everything that the Republicans want. But that's when you have to step back and you have to do what's in the best interest of the constituents.
You certainly do. And Congressional District 21 was formerly 18. And, this is a district that was Republican. And then Patrick Murphy came in and held it for a couple of years as a Democrat until he decided to run for Senate. And then our current congressman won the election and has been in place ever since. So we're a district, really, I think it's pretty close as far as Republicans and Democrats. And I think that you're talking about representing the constituents in the end, and you've hit on a couple of things. When you go to Congress, that you are there to work for everybody. So how are you going to deal with the more conservative constituents here in the district? How do you reach out to them? And certainly they're going to have different views than the Democratic, let's just say, on gun reform. That'll be a real tough one, right?
Yes. It will. I mentioned before, and I never rest on my laurels. I've campaigned. This is my third campaign. I've run in traditionally red districts or conservative districts. I have some conservative views too. Like I'm fiscally conservative. But how I reach the middle of the ground is just what I did in the military. We had multiple services, multiple countries we were serving alongside. In the Pentagon, I'm a 5'2" woman wearing a blue blazer, trying to make sure that people understand we have a vested interest in working together. And it's not just enough to get a policy or legislation passed. It's where's the money? And I have dealt with that for so many years. There's only so much money. We don't want to go into further debt. And so I try to talk to people in a nonpartisan fashion. And again, I mentioned grassroots. I mean, I put 50,000 miles on my own car for this own campaign. Thank God I have a Tesla, because I probably couldn't afford the gas to go that far. But it's really talking to the people. I mean, I am surprised that our incumbent is not having the town halls he used to have. I welcome a debate. I've been endorsed by the Palm Beach Post, and I believe the TC Palm feels that we both have favor to serve in Congress. So it's just continuously getting out there and listening to the voters, finding out and conservatives, yes. I mean, again, as a former military policewoman, I packed a lot of guns and I can still shoot really, really well. But we need to make sure that we hold people accountable and make sure we build that trust back in our local law enforcement and our military to protect ourselves. And so I don't want to see us go down this trajectory where we go into open carry and people then will feel more fearful. So,
Corinna, you touched on something in there as well, and that was the debate issue with the current congressman. He's been really tough to debate anybody, and I think that's unfortunate for constituents and for voters such as myself. It gives us all a chance to really vet our candidates, and it's too bad. And I know that you've been wanting to debate as well, and I wish it would happen. I don't know how to change that. You can't make people debate, but it's unfortunate. But it also says something to me about a candidate that refuses to debate. So, take that for what it's worth and grain of salt. And speaking of campaigning, one thing that you talked about was your campaign finance reform. And boy, is that something that I think a lot of the average people here in America would love to see addressed, because money controls politics.
Yes, it's unfortunate. I mean, every time, Congress turns over, they talk about trying to do something with it, and it just doesn't happen, because I think people on both sides of the aisle are dependent on it. And, people may not realize you can go to any incumbent or candidate's information as far as from, the Department of State, where their money's coming from. A lot of it sometimes comes through super PACs, which traditionally I will not accept, especially like Big Sugar, because it doesn't reveal who's actually giving the money. And that's when you have huge super PACs giving to candidates, and candidates who are incumbents, they continue to have their campaign financed all year long. I've been in DC, going to the DCCC building or the RNC, you're raising money every night, and it just continues on. So somebody coming into the race, you start all over. But I'm proud to say, just like last year, ran against the most well-funded state senator. I was on the ground and got 41% of the votes. That's what's going to happen again now. I truly believe the independents, women, Republicans too, they will see who I really am, that I am really the true patriot. So please go to the website. I have a TV ad running on ABC 5 times a day, today and every other day. And, just radio, just everything I can do. So I just ask for everyone's, please just at least research what I stand for. And I'm looking for your vote and for victory to serve you, the people, on November 8th.
Again, we're speaking with Corinna Balderramos Robinson. She is running for Congressional District 21. She is right here in Florida, has been here a long time. As you know, she did run for state senate last time, so you've probably had a chance to meet her as she's out and about. I have her website listed in the comments on the Facebook Live feed as well, and that website is CorinnaForFlorida.us. CorinnaForFlorida.us. Her ad is on her website as well, and as she said, it's a very in-depth website. It gives you a lot of information. Corinna, we have just a minute left, but how can people reach you or help you campaign, or what's left to do for your campaign? It's 1 week away.
Yes, 6 days. As I mentioned on the website, you can sign up to be a volunteer. If you click on the 3 black bars at the top right corner, you can see everything from the endorsements to the bio to activities where I'm going to be on any given day. And I would say, at this point of the election, please reach out to every person family, friend, churchgoer, wherever, and tell them how critically important it is to vote. Oh. I mean, that's what matters, is that vote is so precious and there's no time to waste.
Corinna Robinson, you are absolutely right. I hope we have a much better turnout than we did for the primary, which was around 30%, folks. You really can't complain about what's happening in politics if you don't vote. So let's get out there, make your voice be heard. Again, we're speaking with Dr. Corinna Balderramos Robinson. She's running for Congress in Congressional District 21 on the Democratic ticket. And Corinna, it has been a pleasure, as always, to have you here on air. I appreciate you joining the show so folks could get to know you a little bit better.
Thank you, Casey. Have a safe day.
Thank you, you too. Again, folks, early voting has begun, and election is next Tuesday, November 8th. Get out there. Let's vote. Let your voice be heard. And appreciate, again, that Corinna Robinson joined us here today and gave us a really good insight of who she is. Very impressive background. And up next, we're going to be having in Captain Deanna Jones. She is with the Salvation Army, and here it is, getting to be that red kettle season. We're going to be talking about that next.
Forbearances, working remotely, internet shopping, retail space and rental income have been hit hard.